I'm Carly Rachelle, and I've been in the new home sales industry for 5 years, and today I'm very excited to interview Nathan Nasseri. Buying a home is the biggest decision most people make in their lifetime, so why does it still feel outdated?
Why? The biggest change that's happened in home building, besides the internet, websites coming in, like 70 years ago, people would buy a house out of a catalog. And then the next innovation builders came up with was a show home. And we've really been so reliant on show homes as an industry to sell that vision to a customer. And I know when I was selling houses, and I'm sure the same thing was with you, like when you have a good show home, it's the easiest job. And when you have a bad show home, it's probably the hardest job in the world because you have to really convince the customer well, this is only one variety of what we can do. But if you're in a show home parade and you have the best floor plan with maybe the least amount of upgrades, and so therefore you have the best price, and that's going to stick with people and they're going to remember that, versus going in and be like, oh, well, what's this house? Well, this is an $800,000 house. It's got $150,000 of upgrades in it. And then people are like, well, what's upgraded? What's standard? And they have to do all these mental gymnastics to figure out how's that house going to work for them. My personal, favorite was working in a show home where we did like $10,000 of upgrades. And I worked in another one where there were no upgrades at all. And people would come in and they'd be like, what's upgraded? I'd be like, nothing. And they're like, wow, this is a really nice house. And I know they'd go to our competitors next door and they were like $200,000 or $300,000 of upgrades in there. And the customers were just like, I don't really understand what I'm getting. But yeah, if you don't connect with that customer on a show home level, then you have to connect with them on a personal level. And you have to say, well, this is only one option that we offer. Here's the other show homes that you can go and take a look at.
But we're getting ahead of ourselves. What actually is ResVR?
ResVR is using gaming technology, which may sound weird, but we take video game technology and we incorporate it into home building. So this way, the same way that if you're playing a new video game, you might get to decide, am I playing this as like an elf or as a wizard? We do that exact same thing, like a character customizer for the home building industry. So this way you can customize all of the models that the builder has available with every countertop, every flooring, every backsplash, every cabinet, literally everything the builder offers, inside, outside, even at a community basis, we will create as a video game. So it's essentially a video game experience or a gamification of the home buying process for the builders that we work with AAA state-of-the-art graphics so that it looks photorealistic. It looks like something that's already built. It feels like something you could live in and move into right away. So it's connecting with buyers on that emotional level. And it also lives entirely on the cloud. So this is something that lives on the builder's website. It's one of the first things that the buyer can engage with. And it allows them to actually research and discover what they want for their home without needing to send an email, pick up the phone, or get in their car and drive to a show home. It's still going to, the end result, get that customer to that stage, but it's also like removing that friction of allowing them to discover 24 hours a day and figure out exactly what their dream home looks like. A really important thing for me is to just allow customers to see, the quality that they can get from working with home builders, because it's not something you get from buying a used home. Used homes have toenails in the carpet, surprises behind the walls, appliances that are going to break on you because they weren't treated properly. A new home is fully warranted. It's a guarantee. It's a promise that you're going to get something good. And that's really what we're delivering to the builders is showing the buyers what that promise is and removing any of those ambiguity or removing the ambiguity of buying a new home of, well, just imagine how good your kitchen will look based off of these samples and off of this flat lay of all of the things that we're going to put into your house. Just imagine how good that's going to look. And unless you've been to school to learn how to do that, that's virtually impossible for people. I can't even do it. And I've been in the industry basically my whole life. So to ask a normal person to pick their, grout color, tile color, cabinet color, flooring, everything for their house, it's just not realistic. But with gaming technology, it's actually not just realistic, it's achievable, and we're doing it. And I think that it's really the experience that home buyers deserve today. It's not the 1970s or the 1980s anymore, where it's like, hey, I'll just buy it out of a magazine, or I'll go to the show home and they have like, the shag carpet, whatever it ends up being. It's just like, now you can actually do this at home versus, before, and really even as soon as like 5 years ago, you needed to go to a show home and do this in person. Now you can actually do it entirely online, so that when the buyer actually reaches out, they're like, this is what I want. And there's no discovery. And it just, like you said, smooths, like makes the entire transaction so much smoother.
Absolutely. It really is interesting because what I found when I was working in the show home is that most often we were selling the show home floor plan. It wasn't the other floor plans that were selling like hotcakes, because people had trouble actually visualizing what it would feel like to walk into that space.
Yeah.
For
me, like I probably sold, out of like the over 200 houses I've sold, maybe 5 of those were sold strictly off plan. And I think every other time it was either the show home, like you were saying, or it's like, hey, get in your car, drive to the other side of the city, look at this other community we have where that model that I think is going to be a good fit for you is. And the challenge and the big risk of doing that is like the customer may never come back. So it's really like counterintuitive to tell a customer like, hey, why don't you leave? And hopefully you come back if you see something that you like. But the very few times that I was actually selling a house off of a plan, it was because the customers were actually architects or engineers. So they had that ability to visualize in 3-dimensionals. And I remember like one customer in particular who was like, hey, I've seen this house before, but it's out of my budget. So can we like reduce the specs in the house to get it within my budget? And I was like, sure, we could do that. So we like stripped all the railing out of it. And then when their house was built, they were like, I don't like this. And it was like, yeah, because the parts that you liked, you took out, but you just didn't know what that would look like until it was fully built. But curious if how many times you've been able to sell or found the challenges of selling off of a plan instead of just selling the show home or other houses that were built to show homes.
It is very challenging. Of course, when you're purchasing a home, it's a very emotional purchase. We think that people are walking in and buying square footage. They're not. They're actually purchasing the future identity of themselves and their family for generations to come, essentially, right? So to have the expectation on people, to place the expectation of, here are black lines on a piece of paper, envision what this is going to look like, and what it's, more importantly, what it's going to feel like when you're walking into that house, is very challenging.
Yeah.
I found it very, very hard to communicate that. Majority of human beings are not visual. Yes, some of them are. Some of them could envision what it would look like. But even then, oftentimes people would come back and say, gosh, I thought it was going to look this way. I really envisioned that. And that's what I had in my mind. And now it's different. Now that it's actually built, I'm worried that I'm not going to like it. So that's on the flip side. I would sell off of the black lines on the paper, and then they would come back later after it's already, well under construction, and they're like, uh-oh, I think I made a mistake. And that's also not ideal, right? We always wanted our customers walking away being really excited about their purchase, because then that's how we're going to get more referrals. We're going to pull more people in. And so that was a huge challenge for me when I was in the show home. As for selling from black lines alone, I mean, a lot of people would come in and they'd think logically that this is the perfect floor plan for me. It's not the show home, so they don't get to see it in person. But they'd look at the plan and say, okay, perfect. It checks all the boxes. It has the 4 bedrooms for our kids, our 3 kids and us. The separation between the primary bedroom and the secondary bedrooms. Like, there were so many things. We have the mud room instead of a hallway at the back, off of the garage. And so they'd go through all of these logical things that, yes, I think this is the perfect fit for me. And then, they'd go, okay, yes, this makes sense, but like, how is it actually going to feel? And I think it's that emotional part that is so challenging to get when it's not actually already constructed. When you're trying to sell something that doesn't actually exist.
Yeah.
Logically, it makes sense, but emotionally, they're like, I can't see myself in this space yet.
Well, that's sort of the interesting part about going through the sales journey with a customer is, understanding like what are the problems that you have in your current house and how can what we're offering solve those problems for you. That was always like the most fun part of the job for me, was like solving this puzzle for these customers of, if they did come out of the showroom and they're like, that's not for me, it's too small, it's too big, whichever it was. Then you'd kind of say like, well, tell me about your current living situation and the challenges you're finding in your current house and why you're looking to move. So all of these are, reasons why you can basically take that information and think of, well, I'm the expert for the builder. I can basically find you a prescribed house that's going to solve those problems for you. But you're completely right. Like if you go through that entire journey with a customer and you build a house off of a plan, and then they're like, yeah, this actually isn't what we thought it would be. Not only have you lost the referrals for that customer, but that customer's probably having remorse about this whole decision. And then every person they talk to, they're going to say, I wish we didn't build a house. I wish we had just bought a used home. And then that stigma kind of, reverberates around the economy or the industry. I think that's why a lot of people, even ones that start out the journey looking for a new home, they'll end up buying a used home because it's just so much easier than going through this whole process and all the decisions that you have to make. Like it's really overwhelming. And I think especially today, like I haven't sold houses in like 10 years. So I think where buyers have moved and evolved over the last 10 years, it's more than we've seen in 50 years. Like people expect everything online 24 hours a day. And, the challenge of working in a showroom is like, hey, I'm open 6 hours a day, 6 days a week, maybe 7 days a week, depending on the builder. But that's really challenging. And I think also for me, like, there were some days where I'd work till midnight with customers, customizing their model and going over all the selections. And that's not a great use of anybody's time. Like these are people that have kids that thankfully have the support, but I couldn't imagine being in that customer's shoes. I would just be like, I don't want to be here till midnight designing my house with you. I want to go home and sleep. I don't want to go through this whole journey.
Yes, and we absolutely have a solution for that, and I'm so excited to get to that. But you mentioned that it's been a decade since you've been in the show home. So I would love to understand, for people who have never met you or don't know you, who are you? What got you into the industry to begin with?
Well, I grew up in the industry. So my family started Landmark Homes. They're one of the largest home builders in North America. They've built 20,000 homes in Alberta. And I kind of just grew up in the industry. I spent most of my professional career, obsessed with the video game industry. And that's when after working in that industry for a long time, I'd moved over into the home building space. So that was an unexpected turn in my career. But what I also was very surprised by was how much I loved selling houses and like just meeting with people, and beyond like the joy of like helping find a family find the perfect house. It was also like extremely lucrative. Like you only have to talk to people. And I did this, in my, mid to late 20s where, I didn't have a family or a partner. So I could just, it's like, oh, it's every weekend and every evening you're in the show home. And I'm like, that's cool. I'll do that. Because the upside was so great. But yeah, finding like the satisfaction of like the thankfulness that those customers have of like, thank you for being so helpful along this journey for us. Like it's the most rewarding feeling I've ever had. And yeah, I'm sure you feel the same way too. Like giving the customer the keys on possession day and knowing you have a bond for life. And like I had customers where I sold them and then I sold their brother and then I sold their sister and then I sold their parents. Like all those referrals just from like one great experience. And then you continue that and you continue that standard of excellence along every customer, and making sure that you do everything in your power to make sure they have an excellent experience buying a house from you. because it's overwhelming. And I've been in those design appointments with customers where, the husband's like, don't spend more than $30,000. And the wife's like, but if we spend 10 more thousand, it's going to look so much better. And, they start arguing about it. And, usually the wife wins those arguments, but
Of course.
of course,
Of course.
but it's such a, interesting experience to work with someone, and you are their lifeline through the entire process. Anything goes wrong, they're probably going to reach out to you and ask for your support and your help. And I just loved it. But I always found with every customer, there was always at least one thing they would change in their house. And that actually drove me kind of crazy. Was like, there would be something like, oh, I wish we'd put hardwood on the floor, like instead of carpet on the stairs, I wish we'd put hardwood. And it's like, yeah, well, I knew that was important to you. We had talked about it. We'd priced it out. Like, yeah, we just didn't know what it would look like. And even when you do those like custom price requests of, hey, let's upgrade from carpet to hardwood on the stairs. And then you tell them like, hey, it's $18,000. And they're like, yeah, we're good. Like, we're going to skip that. And then, like you said, when the house is done, that's all of a sudden when they're like, ooh, yeah. So how much to rip that out? And yeah.
Yes.
And then they're like, I guess we'll just live with it.
Yeah. And then they're living with regret. And that is not fun,
It's
right?
not.
It doesn't create the experience that we're wanting to create for them.
Yeah. I know when I talk to people about, my journey and my experience of working in the showroom, there's one guy that particularly sticks out in my mind where he's been living in this house for 20 years. And the builder offered him like, hey, do you want an 8-foot main floor or a 9-foot main floor? And they're like, it's like $4,000 to do it. And he's like, 8 feet, 9 feet, who cares? To this day, he regrets that. Every time he comes into his house, he's like, I wish I had gotten the 9-foot main floor. But he's been in that house for a long time. But still, that sticks with him.
Because you don't know what a difference it's going to make. Logically or in theory, a foot isn't that much, or so you think.
Yeah.
And then the moment you're walking into this home, you're like, wow, like the ceiling, it feels a little bit low.
Yeah.
But you don't know that unless you've seen the opposite, right?
Yeah. And I don't know if I've definitely made recommendations to customers and said, I suggest you do this upgrade. And then they'll be like, no, I don't want to spend the extra money. They start, budgeting and weighing like, is this worth the extra $10, $20, $30,000? And the only thing they have to make that decision on is like the cost of it. Mm-hmm. And they're not listening to an expert say, this is actually going to be really good for your family based off of what you've told me and what is important to you in a home. And they still default back to like, let's go with the less affordable. Like, let's go with the cheaper option. Let's not take the risk, because maybe that trust isn't there, or maybe they just don't see the value. So again, it's super hard to explain to it. It's why I think it takes probably 5 or 6 times of building a house to get it right. And when you work at a home builder, you kind of forget that, because you're building, 5 or 6 houses per month, like just as a salesperson with your customers. And that's something that, that's why you learn like what does look good and what doesn't look good, and making those recommendations to customers. But, sometimes the logic part of their brain wins, and they just say, yeah, like, I don't want to spend that extra money, because it is a lot of money. It's the most money you've ever spent before in your life. And it's a scary number. So it can be very, very intimidating to see those big numbers on a contract. But then people often forget, like, oh, I'm paying this off over 25 or 30 years. So the payments are actually quite small comparison. But when you see $30,000 as an extra line item on a contract, that's not a number you want to see. It's like, can we just get rid of that? Can we just remove that out and get like the price that, I thought the price starts at 600. Why is it 630? How did we get it up to 630,000?
Absolutely. And most people don't have a real understanding of construction. They don't understand, what is an easy change, what is a hard change, right? So for example, one recommendation I would often make working in the show home is, okay, pot lights, because you're essentially ripping the ceiling open if you want to do that later. So if that is important to you, do it up front now, right? Whereas I've learned, even my husband being in construction, he has taught me a lot about, there's certain things that you can change afterwards that aren't a big deal. but the average person doesn't have that knowledge.
Yeah.
And so they go into this experience very blind. And unless they have a good salesperson to be able to kind of guide that, but even then, it's very challenging because they know they have a vision in their head. They want it to look a certain way. But if they don't have any way to actually see what that's going to look like, then how are they supposed to move forward confidently?
Absolutely.
And we understand that people purchase when they feel certain.
Yeah.
Right? They don't purchase when they're feeling shaky or unsure, like, is this kind of scary, risky? I can't envision what my new home is going to look like, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to move forward with a decision, which means the decision is going to be very slow.
Yeah.
What we want to do is really collapse timelines. We want to remove friction from the buying process so that things actually progress quickly, right?
Yeah.
And so, okay, so we have a solution, which I'm super excited to talk about. So at the highest level, Nathan, please tell us, what is ResVR? Because I feel like ResVR is such a cool solution to a lot of the challenges and problems that we've talked about today so far.
Yeah, well, ResVR for me, it's, my family really specializes in, building the best house possible using technology. I can't touch that. That's not something I'm never going to specialize in. I actually find there's so much inefficiencies in the sales process number one, get in your car and come and talk to me. Like, you want to find out pricing, get in your car, come and talk to me. Like, it's so outdated. And, 10 years ago, it was like weird maybe to buy things online. And now it's just like normalized.
So normal.
It's like, I'm out of garbage bags. Well, pull out my phone, I'll order on Amazon, it's there tomorrow. Mm-hmm. It's that easy. It's like, I think most consumers are comfortable with that today. And builders are still like, outdated, websites, especially when you compare it to like a car company where you can design your car online. That's the experience I think customers deserve today. They shouldn't have to come and talk to a builder to find out basic information beyond like some photographs and some black lines. So it's like, what does this cost? Where can I build this? What are the upgrades I can do? What's my house going to look like? These are basic things that customers can do in literally every other facet of their life where they're looking to what they can actually purchase. So what we've built at ResVR is, taking my experience selling houses, my experience in the video game industry, and my experience growing up in the home building space. We've created a full house configurator for home builders so they can show every model, every option, every upgrade online on the builder's website. And this way customers can really engage with the builder's product, and builders can actually understand at a much better level what customers are interested in. Because when builders are so reliant on their sales team and getting the feedback from the sales team of like what's popular and what people are looking for, the challenge, of course, is like, hey, this model house, it's selling really well. Well, guess what? That model house is our show home. So let's build the show home again. We'll build another show home with the same model. And people continuously keep buying the show home because it's what they can see. It's what they can understand. What we're doing is we're allowing people to go online, experience everything that the builder has to offer, and really like self-discover what they want. So when they're coming in and talking to Nathan or Carly for the first time, they're not coming and be like, I don't know what I want. I know I want a house this big with this many bedrooms. They could come in and they say, I want to buy the cedar floor plan with these upgrades, and I'm here to negotiate, and I'm here to buy a house from you. And that's ultimately what we're trying to build here, is just streamlining the sales experience. Home builders get 99% of their traffic to their website, and 1% of that traffic actually shows up in the show home. So what we're trying to do is, what would that be like for a builder's business if we could change that to 2% or 3%? Not huge changes, but just allowing customers to have that experience online instead of being so dependent on the physical experience.
I feel what you're creating with ResVR is really the ability to make fast decisions. I feel like we are compressing the time between people looking at what it is they want to purchase and then actually signing the dotted line to make that purchase. Would you agree with that?
I think so. It's obviously about showing a customer what they can get, feeling comfortable with making that purchase, but it's also, for me, like, it's the convenience. Like, if you're getting 99% of your attention online, but you're still reliant on people to physically come in and talk to somebody, there's a huge disconnect there. And I think especially today with consumers' behavior changes and there being more options today than ever before, like builders have to create a modern experience so that customers feel like they actually understand what they're getting. I think that's like, a huge challenge with selling new homes is like you're selling an idea, you're selling a vision, you're selling something that you would depend on your customer's imagination. Unlike if you're a realtor where you can take someone through a house and say, this is what you're going to get. And maybe you have to reno it and do some things to get it to the way you want it to be. But with a new home, you have to get it exactly the way you want it to be from the very beginning. And, from taking that hold to selecting every single thing for your house, countertops, tile, grout color, all that has to be done within like a 3-month time frame. And that is so many decisions to front load into a customer. Like that's a lot for anybody. And then you have like designer appointments, supplier appointments, all the meetings at the show homes, go talk to your mortgage professional. Like it is a lot you're asking for a customer. So why not simplify it and allow them to do this at home, 24 hours a day. They could do it at work, on their lunch break. They could do it anytime. And I think that's what really ResVR is trying to do for the industry is make it convenient to buy a new home.
Nathan, you've been in the industry a really long time. Your family has been in the industry. Why do you feel the industry is lagging currently?
I think the industry is behind because it's a legacy industry and the way you built the last house, it's just very easy to build the next house the same way. And, change is actually a threat to builders. Like you have a proven system, it works, why change it? And especially for any innovators in the industry, from a personal perspective, if you bring on that technology fails, you're probably getting fired. So there's really no incentive for the builders to make technological adaptations because, like you described, it's a basic need. Everyone needs to live in a house. So if you're selling something that is a basic need and you're providing that to the industry, and like building homes is not easy. Like not everyone can be a home builder. So that technological adaptation, it's sort of like, a builder's running their entire business on Excel and they've got like one guy managing all the spreadsheets for the entire company and that's working. Well, it's working. Like there's no reason that you couldn't talk to any builder and say, what we're doing is not working. Like it is working. They can show you that. You can't go to DR Horton and say, you are not doing a good job. Like they are building, 100,000 homes a year. So that's a great example of if it's not broke, don't fix it. And that's where I think the technology for the industry, it takes so long to adapt because someone has to prove it and someone has to de-risk it to a level where it's a no-brainer decision for a builder to do that. But I also think, the trade shortage is a great example of like, there's not as many framers today as there was 10 or 20 years ago. So that's why I think we're seeing a huge push into robotic home construction is, hey, the skilled labor is gone. The skilled labor that remains is now charging us a lot more to do this work. We don't have the output that we need to service the demand. What can we do? And, people have turned to robots to build homes, or they're doing offsite manufacturing. Where I think the industry forgets is like, yes, you can use better building materials, you can use better building technology, but how do you actually make it easier for the customer to purchase the home? And we've seen a lot of innovation around like virtual tours, like Matterports, and people being able to do that for existing properties that have been fully built. But how do you do it for the pre-built environment? And how do you make it easy for a customer to say, hey, honey, come look at this kitchen. I think this would be really good for us. And then like switch out the appliances or switch out the cabinets and see like, yeah, that's actually exactly what we're imagining. Because I feel like when you're selling a house, you're constantly up against the home buyer's imagination. And that imagination can either be your best friend or your worst nightmare. And I'm sure you've had experiences working with customers where they're like, that's not what I picked. and you have to pull out their contract and be like, is that your name and initial next to the selection? They're like, yeah, but that's not what I picked. You guys made a mistake. And that turns this amazing relationships you've spent months developing into basically your worst nightmare.
Like
and
that.
Like that. And they are like, Carly made a mistake, and I'm going to tell everyone that this builder sucks. And, there's two choices. Either the builder, makes good by the customer and, fixes this mistake, or the customer pays for it, or maybe there's a splitting of that cost. But it is definitely not a good experience. And then that client only remembers that from their build experience. They will not say, you know what, Carly built that house 10 weeks earlier than she said she would. And that was great for us. Carly got us $15,000 off on that house. Like, we saved so much money that we could go and buy furniture. They're going to remember, oh yeah, that builder, they made this mistake and now we have to live with it, or we hate it, and whatever it is. And that is so difficult as a salesperson to deal with. And I think that's like probably the biggest pain point ResVR can solve is this is exactly what you're getting. There's no miscommunication about a 3x12 subway tile or a 4x6, subway tile backsplash. And is it 50-50 vertical install, or is it 70-30 vertical install? Like, these are terms that you and I understand, but a normal person off the street is like, what is this guy talking about? And I think that's what we so often forget in the industry is like, we're getting people to sign off on contracts that literally has this wording inside of it. And we expect a customer to catch any error that, they think that they're getting, and they just can't. Like, you could put anything in front of a customer during a design appointment and say, sign that. They're like, just get me out of here. Like,
Yes.
I've been here for 3 hours. I need to get out of here right now.
Yes, because we've asked them to make hundreds of micro decisions in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
Right? It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's incredibly overwhelming. And that's where decision fatigue comes in. Overwhelm, where they're like, okay, you know what? No, I just need a minute. I need to like step back. I need to sleep on it. And as soon as that buying temperature starts to settle and it cool off, that's where we start to lose that potential client, right? Maybe they're not going to purchase anymore because they're just like on overwhelm. And again, we talked about it earlier. People buy when they feel certain about it, when they've had that emotional spark where it's like, this is the thing I'm supposed to do. This is the house. This is the builder, the floor plan. This is the salesperson that's going to help me do it. I have this beautiful picture in my mind of how this is going to look. But the reality is it's really hard to create that experience when we're also simultaneously asking them to make a million little micro decisions. What color of grout do you want?
That's the part that breaks people. The grout always breaks people.
It's like you have these tiny little samples and then you're like, hey, the grout, and they're like, oh my gosh, this grout color, whatever I choose is going to make or break the entire house.
Yeah, no one can mentally get past the crayon box of grout options. And you can see it when you're with a customer. It's like, and that's like, hey, now the last thing is just pick the grout. And if you pick the wrong grout, your whole house is going to look terrible. So
yes, the whole thing is going to fall, crash down. Yeah. It's quite, we joke about it now, but this is very real.
This is happening right now. Yes. Someone's having that decision right now.
This moment in time while we're recording this.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because I found when I was in the show home, it's like the tiniest, most insignificant details that actually are the things that people get hung up on. They're like, okay, well, this is going to change the entire look of my house. It's like, okay, well, what if we had a solution so that you could actually see what it's going to look like, so that now you're not focusing on like this itty bitty tiny piece of grout and how it's going to look. You're actually seeing this expansive full picture view. Hey, this is how your house is going to look. Immediately, it's like a breath of like a release, if you will, of like, okay, that's actually what my house is going to look like. I don't have to worry about it. I can sleep tonight. My house is going to look awesome. I'm going to impress all of my friends. Everyone who comes over is going to think that I'm, rocking it because I have the nice,
totally.
I'm going down the tangent of the many different reasons people purchase. But, people want to be proud of the space that they've created because they're co-creating this house. And if they make a mistake, right? We know people don't want to make mistakes. They don't want to be wrong.
Yeah.
And God forbid if they choose the wrong color,
Yeah.
right?
And that's for everything. The flooring,
Yes.
the carpet, the railing, the trim, the baseboards, everything. And it's like, I don't think home buyers fully appreciate what they're signing up for when they're putting that deposit down and signing a purchase agreement with the builder. I think when they're at the design selection appointments and making all of those choices, that's when it hits them where it's like, oh crap, we could really screw this up. And it's too late to back out now. At that point, we've got their deposit, and it's like, well, your choices are we keep your deposit and we cancel, or you build the house. Those are your two choices here. And that's not a great choice. So it's kind of like you need to walk down this road. You've kind of committed at this point. I think that having tools to show customers what they're getting is like so essential in like today's day and age. And I remember even like 10 years ago when I was selling houses, customers would ask me, don't you have some sort of thing that can show us what our house is going to look like? Like, you guys are a 100 million plus company a year. Like, you're building hundreds of houses per year, and you don't have anything besides like a PDF of what my house looks like and the construction drawings. It's like, yeah, that's what we got. And we got a show home. We got a show home too. You can go look at too.
Yeah. And they're like, that's not enough.
Exactly.
I want more.
And another issue, I remember like one customer specifically, they were one of my first customers, and they like came in and they were like, we remember this show home from 3 years ago. We love this show home. We just moved to the US to do some schooling. We're coming back. We want to buy everything exactly in this house. And everything in that house was discontinued.
No.
So they had to still go through the selection appointment, and we got the house as close as we could. The only thing, and I'll never forget this, they were doing schooling in New England. So they saw this New England backsplash, and that's why they picked the backsplash as this New England style backsplash. But when they saw it in their kitchen, they were like, that's horrible. Like, this is so ugly. This ruined our kitchen, to the point where they actually like took possession of the house and renovated the kitchen afterwards.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
I mean, they were like a very unusual type of customer where they're like, it's very rare, I found, like where a customer is like, I remember this show home from 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. I'm still thinking about this show home and how badly I want it. But if they could have had that experience online, I mean, they wouldn't have had to go to that design appointment. They would have been able to just do the whole thing, maybe even remotely. That would have made my job as a salesperson so much easier.
Absolutely. It's only been a couple of years since I was in the show home, and I truly believe that had we had ResVR in the show home, it would have made my job so much easier. It would have made the experience for the purchaser so much better. Like, just they could see what they're buying. They feel at ease. They feel safe with that buying decision. They move forward. They refer people to us. We continue doing our good work. I just think it would have been so helpful to have ResVR there.
Yeah, I mean, it's the biggest purchase you're ever going to make, and it's overwhelming. It's super stressful. And even if you think about like where the automotive industry has gone, and those cars cost more today than ever. Same with housing. Housing costs more today than ever. But the automotive industry has really proven out that having a online configurator or having some type of visualization solution to engage with the customers online, let them play with it. Let them see what their house would look like if they spend the extra $20,000. That doesn't mean they're going to. And it's the same with a car. What if I get, the 20-inch rims instead of the 19-inch rims? How is that going to impact my price? What's my car going to look like? What is this car going to say about me as a person? And it's the exact same thing when you're buying a home. And the automotive industry, as soon as they introduced visualizers, they saw huge lifts in the statistics related to, based on the studies they did, what the results were for those businesses. Because if a customer can see it, they can connect with it, they can find what they want. Because buying a car or buying a home, especially buying a home, it's so personal. You need to understand, how is this going to work for me? And instead of just like, oh, well, hey, that house in the neighborhood we want to live, that's fully built, established in the school district we want, let's just go buy that. And builders have a lot to compete with today. And it's mostly like people are busier than ever. So you have to prioritize making it convenient for customers to interact with your product. Because if you make it, difficult or frustrating or any level of friction, they're just going to go to the path of least resistance, which is typically, hey, let's go on Zillow, let's see what's out there, let's buy that. Because all those tools are normalized now. 10 years ago, it was difficult to find Matterport tours of houses. Builders have Matterport tours of their show homes, but it's still only showing one option when, most of that's probably discontinued anyways. So you want to show the builder, like, this is exactly what you can get. These are active products that you can put into your home today and make it easy so that the customer is not guessing what they're getting. And the salesperson doesn't have to convince them, hey, this is a good idea. You should do this. This is going to solve all of your problems. They're like, the customer is like, I know this is going to solve all my problems. Like, this is exactly what I want. Like, I'm just here to negotiate with you. I'm ready to buy.
That friction you talk about is so key. So many people think that in sales, it's about moving people forward, moving them into action. Really, it's about removing friction, removing those barriers to buying so that they feel like they can just move forward with it, right? So I think that piece that you mentioned, friction, get rid of it, right? ResVR gets rid of the friction between you actually selling a house and quickly. It collapses timelines, it gets things moving. And so I think that's really a profound thing that ResVR does for us. I'm so grateful you shared that. So if someone were to take one thing away from our conversation today, what would it be?
I would say that you have to accept that buyer behaviors have changed and you have to stop resisting that. You have to understand that shopping online is not a weird thing people do anymore. It's the bare minimum any brand and business has to do. And if you're not providing that, you're not relevant.
Absolutely. It's the norm today.
Yeah.
I think that about covers it. Is there anything else that you'd want to add, Nathan?
No, I think that was everything. Thanks so much, Carly.
Amazing. Well, I've really enjoyed our conversation. So thanks for sitting with me today. And thank you so much for watching.